boys and girls. Today we are going to read Curious George's Dinosaur Discovery. The author calls him curious. This is our main character, George. Curious means that you really want to learn something or know something. You're very eager to find out. And that's how they describe George. We're going to look in the book for examples to support that idea that he's a curious monkey. Okay, so we'll pay attention to what he says and what he does that tells us that he's being curious, that he's trying really hard to find something out. This book was written by Catherine Hapka, and it was illustrated by Anna Grossnickle Hines. This is George. He was a good little monkey and always very curious. George loved to go places with his friend, the man with the yellow hat. And one of their favorite places to visit was the Dinosaur Museum. Today is a special day, George's friend said. We are going to do something very interesting. George was curious. What could be more interesting than a trip to the Dinosaur Museum? The man with the yellow hat led the way through the museum. George wanted to stop and look at the dinosaur bones, but his friend kept going, so George kept following. And finally, they walked right out the back door. Has George said anything that tells us he's curious? Has he done anything or wanted to do anything that would tell us he's curious? He wanted to stop and look at the dinosaur bones. He didn't, though. He knows it's not the right time. He's following directions. George and the man with the yellow hat climbed into a van and they rode to a rocky quarry. Dozens of people were there. Some were digging with shovels. Others were using pickaxes or other kinds of tools. Surprise, George's friend said. We will be helping the museum scientists dig for dinosaur bones. George was curious. Were there really dinosaurs buried in there? He ran over for a better look. George watched the scientist work. She dug up some dirt and put it into her sifting pan. It took a long time to sift it, and in the end, no dinosaur bones. Oh well, she said, time to try again. So, George was thinking, were there really dinosaurs buried there? So the author tells us what he's thinking, and that shows that he's being curious. Then we see what George does. He's running over to watch the scientist. He's observing very carefully. He wants to know. He's being curious. The next pan was empty too. So was the next one, and the one after that. George yawned. So far, digging for dinosaurs was not as exciting as he'd expected. George was curious. How could he help find dinosaur bones? So now the author is telling us he's wondering how he can help, how he can find them. His thought tells us that he's curious. He wants to know. He found a spare shovel lying nearby. He dug and dug, but he didn't find any dinosaurs. When he climbed out of his hole, George spotted another scientist. He was dusting something with a small brush. Oh well, the scientist said, this is not a bone, just a rock. George wanted to help. He picked up a brush and he went to work. But it turns out that monkeys are not very good at dusting. As he hurried away from the cloud of dust, George bumped into a wheelbarrow. Maybe there were dinosaur bones in it. He climbed up to look inside, but the wheelbarrow was awfully tippy. So he has done some things to show us that he's curious. He dug that hole, looking. He picked up the brush and he was looking. And then he thought maybe there were some dinosaur bones in there, and he was curious. He was eager to find out if they were in there, so he climbed up to look. And it was tippy. Crash! George, the wheelbarrow, and a whole lot of dirt went flying. Hey! Someone cried. What's that monkey doing? George scampered away straight up the cliff. Monkeys are good at climbing, so George kept going, higher and higher. When he got to the top, he accidentally knocked a stone over the edge. That stone hit another stone, which hit another stone, and another. Oh no, it was a rock slide! And so when he climbed up to get away, he knocked down rocks, and they bumped into each other until they started falling more fast, more quickly. And it was a rock slide, and a bunch of rocks fell off the hillside. George could hardly believe what he saw. Dinosaur bones! After that, the dig was even more fun. George helped the scientists dig and sift and dust and take photographs of the bones he had found. And the next time that he and the man with the yellow hat visited the dinosaur museum, George got to see his dinosaur on display. Was George curious? Yes. What does curious mean? Does George's curiosity ever get him in trouble? How? In the end, how did George's curiosity help the scientists in the story? Thank you for reading with me today.